We owe our livelihood to the hard work of our farmers, I emphasized to my soon-to-be father-in-law, but he dismisses my words with a scoff. He belittles farming as an unprofitable endeavor, even daring me to prove its worth. Fine, I'll show him the reality of life on a farm. Let him witness firsthand the toil and dedication required. My name is Henry. I used to work in sales, but when my father's health declined, I assumed responsibility for our family farm. As the second son, with my elder brother abroad for work, the duty fell upon me to carry on our family's legacy. I am engaged to Ellie, a woman of both sweetness and determination. I was captivated by her from the moment I saw her bustling about at our local cafe, and thus began our love story. 2 years into our courtship, she accepted my proposal of marriage. And now, as I prepare to meet Ellie's parents, nerves churn within me. My mother reassures me as we gaze up at the opulent high-rise where Ellie's parents reside. Don't fret, Henry. I've spoken to my mother about you. But my father, well, he's a different matter altogether. I've heard tales of her stern father, a man of authority who presides over several successful restaurants. Despite my nerves, I gather my courage and enter to greet them. To my immense relief, both extend warm welcomes. I apologize for our inability to sync our schedules due to my demanding job. My soon-to-be father-in-law begins, launching into a detailed account of his company's prosperity. Henry, I've heard you're excelling in sales. That must come with a handsome income, yes? Have you considered where you'd like to settle down in the future? Perhaps in this very condo? I manage a strained smile in response to the rapid barrage of questions. You're being rather forward, dear, chides my mother-in-law as she serves the tea. Thank you, this tea is delightful. I interject, finding solace in its comforting flavor. Oh, I'm delighted you enjoy it. It's sourced from my brother's tea plantation. Our family estate boasts a rich tradition of tea cultivation, and we receive the freshest leaves, she explains, igniting a lively exchange as we delve into the nuances of tea. However, my father-in-law interjects with a scoff, a tea plantation. How archaic. Few households still indulge in tea drinking these days. I wonder when your family estate will become obsolete. His disparaging comment leaves my mother-in-law crestfallen. I recall hearing that tea plantations face challenges in the modern market. The labor-intensive nature of the work demands both skill and manpower, making profitability uncertain. Witnessing my mother-in-law's despondency, I felt compelled to speak up. Our sustenance hinges on the toil of farmers who labor diligently to cultivate our food. Our very existence is indebted to those who nurture crops. The same applies to tea. I'm certain many find solace in the exquisite flavor of this brew. My father-in-law's expression darkened at my words, evidently displeased by my interjection. Despite the unfavorable timing, I summoned courage and divulged my decision. I've resolved to leave my current occupation and assume stewardship of the family farm. It's a commitment to safeguard the land passed down through generations. Ellie supports this choice, and I implore you to lend us your backing. As the words left my lips, my father-in-law's visage flushed crimson with fury. A farmer? I entertained this meeting because of your stellar sales performance, Ellie. Have I been deceived? His rage turned towards Ellie, accusingly. I've attempted to address this matter with you numerous times, but you've been preoccupied. Furthermore, Mom stands by her decision. Ellie responded, her tone tinged with resignation. She must have anticipated this confrontation. My father-in-law's demeanor underwent a stark transformation upon learning of my transition to farming. It became a tirade of bias against agriculturalists. How dare someone of modest means, dwelling in a humble abode, speak of marriage? It's shameful to admit that my daughter's spouse is a farmer, he ranted, his disdain palpable. When queried about my farming endeavors, I responded, primarily cherry tomatoes. To my surprise, my father-in-law scoffed, cherry tomatoes. They hardly seem profitable, lacking any promising future. Attempting to elaborate, I started, but we cultivate a variety of vegetables, only to be swiftly interrupted by his laughter. Diversifying your crops is a clear indication of minimal profit. He waved off dismissively. No matter my explanations, my father-in-law, having ventured into the restaurant business at a young age and achieved success, remained fixated on profitability. Despite my recent assumption of farm management, I had indeed been contemplating profit margins. Yet, as I endeavored to broach this topic, my father-in-law waved away my efforts with a disinterested shake of his head, evidently not anticipating much from me. I'd be intrigued to witness the farmer's life firsthand. Is your dwelling a humble shack? Do your parents don overalls and straw hats whilst toiling away? He mused sarcastically. His mockery of my home and parents ignited a spark of anger within me, but it was Ellie who vehemently objected. I cannot fathom your mockery of farmers. Your words shame me as your daughter, she retorted, her tone laden with indignation. At the culmination of his tirade, my father-in-law erupted in fury, delivering a slap across Ellie's cheek. My mother-in-law, incensed by his violence against her daughter, voiced her indignation, tears streaming down her cheeks from the sting. Ellie transformed the atmosphere into utter chaos. You reside in this luxurious condo thanks to my efforts. Show some gratitude. I care not whom a daughter like you chooses to marry, he spat venomously. Wrapping my arms around Ellie, who wept from both physical pain and emotional turmoil, I ushered her away from my in-law's abode. I couldn't pardon my father-in-law for his mockery of farming and for laying the hand on Ellie. Father, it's Henry. I'll be bringing my fiancée and her parents over next time. I phoned my own father, recounting every offensive word uttered by my father-in-law. He's in the restaurant business, correct? He inquired, requesting the name of the establishment. Upon divulging my father-in-law's name and the restaurant's moniker, I proposed, I have an idea, something to address this. When pressed for details, I admitted uncertainty, prompting him to abruptly end the call. Shortly after, my father reached out again. Following our conversation, I promptly sought out certain individuals. Subsequently, Ellie and I paid another visit to my mother-in-law. She expressed regret for my father-in-law's haughty demeanor, revealing that his arrogance had escalated alongside his success in the restaurant industry. His ostentatious move to a high-rise condo was merely a display of superiority over those with lesser earnings. It had become routine for him to deride her family's tea plantation, his extramarital affairs conducted with impunity. My mother-in-law confided in me, bearing it all for the sake of Ellie. I don't wish to burden Ellie and Henry with a divorce, she expressed, her kindness shining through as she considered our well-being. Please don't concern yourselves with us. Think of your own happiness, I reassured her, prompting gratitude and a gentle smile in return. Expressing his desire to support his brother, who had inherited the family's tea plantation, my father-in-law emphasized the significance of preserving the ancestral farm Henry. I refuse to witness the demise of a farm that has been a legacy for generations, he asserted. Thus, I intend to divorce him and return to my parents' home. It became evident that my mother-in-law had already resolved to take this course of action. The day arrived when I escorted my in-laws to my parents' residence. Following our plane descent, we embarked on an hour-long drive through sprawling fields and farms. It's astonishing that people inhabit dwellings in such rural settings, my father-in-law remarked disdainfully from the confines of the car. Though Ellie and my mother-in-law wore expressions of discomfort, they remained composed, likely bracing for a potential dispute, as he could opt to return home should tensions escalate. I'm eager to experience the life of a farmer. Do you have an outhouse for a bathroom or something? My father-in-law jeered, his laughter filling the air. You'll soon find out when we arrive. After a stretch of driving, we approached a towering gate flanked by imposing walls. We're here. I've brought everyone, I announced into the intercom, prompting the gate to glide open smoothly. What an impressive entrance. And the garden is simply stunning, Ellie exclaimed, her spirits lifted as she admired the surroundings. We have a gardener who tends to it, but it's designed in the English style, in homage to my parents, I explained as we made our way inside. Enthusiastic admirers of Europe, my parents had adorned the garden with many of my mother's beloved roses. Delighted, my mother-in-law strolled into the garden, inhaling the fragrant aroma of the blooms. My father-in-law grumbled disapprovingly, dismissing the garden as lacking in taste. This way, please, I urged, leading them past the expansive garden towards the grand edifice beyond, the family home. The stately abode boasted 12 rooms, including the spacious living room, dining area, and kitchen. Parked in front of the entrance were 2 luxurious cars and 3 rugged off-road motorcycles, all belonging to us. Surrounding our residence was our extensive farmland. My in-laws and Ellie stood in awe at the sight before them. As we approached, my parents welcomed us with warm smiles. Observing my father-in-law, they exchanged amused glances. Clearly, they're not clad in overalls, my mother quipped with a grin. Upon entering the living room, we were greeted by a gathering of relatives and acquaintances, all impeccably attired in suits. Despite my father-in-law's insistence that formal dress was unnecessary for meeting farmers, he stood out conspicuously in his typical attire of a t-shirt and jeans. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, Ellie, and I, dressed in relatively formal attire, contrasted starkly with his casual appearance. Hello," my father-in-law murmured, his voice tinged with discomfort, his gaze averted in embarrassment. My father proceeded to introduce them to the assembled relatives. "This is Ellie, Henry's fiancée, and these are Ellie's parents." It appeared that Ellie's father harbored a significant bias against farmers. "Surprised to find our home isn't a ramshackle hut," my father teased slightly. The relative's stares at my father-in-law turned frosty. It seemed he had relayed the story I shared with him to everyone. "No, that's not what I meant," he trailed off, flustered. Several men stepped forward, catching my father-in-law off guard. "What brings you here?" he asked, eyes widening in surprise. "We're rather disappointed in you," one of the men stated, directing a reproachful glance at my father-in-law. These individuals were organic farmers who supplied vegetables to the restaurants owned by my father-in-law. Upon hearing the name of the establishment, my father made connections and reached out to these farmers. Having been a farmer himself for many years, my father had a vast network of acquaintances. I had personally met with these farmers and relayed my father-in-law's disparaging remarks. "What am I supposed to do if I can't get vegetables?" my father-in-law lamented, burying his head in his hands. My father recounted. "Why not inquire with Henry? They specialize in organic farming." Despite my father-in-law's ridicule, we had transitioned our focus to organic cultivation in our fields, including cherry tomatoes. Through continuous refinement, we managed to yield exceptionally sweet vegetables, garnering interest from several companies seeking contracts. Turning to me expectantly, my father-in-law was met with a serene smile and a firm refusal. "Certainly, we're not interested in pursuing business ventures." Crestfallen, he slouched back, silent. Meanwhile, amidst the subdued atmosphere, my mother-in-law and our parents engaged in animated conversation. "I'll bring some fresh tea from my hometown next time," my mother-in-law announced, eliciting excitement from my parents. However, en route back home, my father-in-law erupted in fury. "How dare you cancel the deal? Are you trying to bankrupt my business?" he bellowed from the rear seat. To be honest, his restaurant's fate held little concern for me, and you, my own wife, failing to defend me. "This is why I detest rural women." He directed his ire towards my mother-in-law, feeling ignored by my indifference. Unfazed, my mother-in-law responded calmly, "Oh, you prefer urban women, do you? Your current favorite being Mary, isn't that right?" Her composed demeanor only seemed to fuel his rage further. A heavy silence engulfed the car as my father-in-law's complexion paled at her revelation. "Henry hired a detective. You were discreet, so gathering evidence was straightforward. Please arrange the divorce papers and alimony payments," she declared firmly. "Divorce? What nonsense is this? How do you expect to manage without my income?" he retorted in disbelief. She divulged her plan to assist her brother with the tea farm he inherited post-divorce. "Ha," my father-in-law sneered. "A farm teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, isn't it? Very well, I'll grant you a divorce. It's preferable to be with a young woman than to linger with an aging wife." With that, silence enveloped us, thick and suffocating. Upon arrival at the airport, my father-in-law, keen to part ways, strode towards the gate unaccompanied. Ellie, gazing at her father's departing figure, murmured despondently, "To think my father could stoop so low. I believe he'll regret his decision." I consoled her, drawing her close. A few days later, my in-law's divorce was finalized. Owing to evidence of his infidelity, he bore full responsibility. It seemed he nearly coerced my mother-in-law, offering money in exchange for her departure. Ellie and I were incensed upon learning the details, yet my mother-in-law chuckled, claiming she was content with the substantial settlement. My father-in-law's alimony settlement amounted to $50,000, with an additional $15,000 from his mistress. Determined to resurrect the tea farm, my mother-in-law intended to allocate these funds accordingly. Meanwhile, my father-in-law found himself embroiled in turmoil as his high-rise condo became a battleground with the sudden intrusion of his mistress's enraged husband. Indeed, my father-in-law's mistress was married, a fact we uncovered during our investigation, signaling impending trouble. facing not only alimony demands from his mistress but also a lawsuit from her husband. My father-in-law seemingly learned a harsh lesson about relationships. Despite this, he continued to reside alone in his upscale condo. However, his tarnished reputation among the farming community led to a sharp decline in business opportunities, prompting the closure of his organic vegetable branches. Feeling the sting of loneliness, it was rumored that my father-in-law resorted to sending letters to my mother-in-law's parents' home, pleading for her return due to the solitude. Initially, my mother-in-law entertained these missives, but she now discards them unread. When he dared to call, she swiftly shut him down, suggesting he vacate the high-rise if loneliness weighed heavily upon him. We shared a chuckle at her response, pondering whether his discomfort stemmed from the solitude of his spacious abode or financial woes resulting from his dwindling business. In any case, we heard he downsized to a modest apartment. Since assuming control of the farm, I've been immersed in constant busyness, but having Ellie by my side has been an immense source of support. When we were dating, I doubt she envisioned herself as a farmer's wife, yet she embraced the role without a hint of complaint, for which I am deeply grateful. I've discovered a newfound fondness for farming, perhaps inherited from my mother's lineage. Ellie's laughter is a constant source of joy. A year later, we celebrated our wedding with grandeur, though my father-in-law's absence cast a shadow over the festivities. It pained me to think he couldn't witness his daughter's special day. Nevertheless, my mother-in-law sent us freshly packed tea as a gift, expressing her desire for us to share it with our guests. With my mother-in-law's assistance, the once struggling tea farm now shows promise of thriving. Their tea remains as fragrant and delicious as ever, thanks to her dedication and support.